I, then I will record again. Hello, everyone. What I want to do right now is, those of you who are in Carbondale yesterday will have seen this, but I created a Google Earth presentation where we fly through different parts of the landscape to see some of the projects that are in Barichara. And this is something I put together for an event that we hosted at the beginning of October when we had people from around the world come to Barichara. And I wanted you to see it so that you could see the landscape from my eyes, to see how the projects within the landscape organize within the shape and the structure of the land itself. And so that's the idea for what we're going to do. And I will go through these fairly quickly because the individual projects are, each of them has a long story. And what I'm going to do is just give you a flavor for how they're related to each other. So with that in mind, I will start recording, or I will start screen sharing. And then I have to remove some things. I think this is the one challenge, is how to do it that way. There we go. So for starters, I want you to see that here is where we are in Barichara. It's in the northern Andes of Colombia. And I want to start by showing you that we have defined a regional climate system. And this has to do with the shape of the land with 3 different mountain ranges. There's a mountain range that goes from south to north that is on our west, should be to the left. And then there's a mountain range from the southwest to the northeast, which is at the bottom of the image, and from the southeast to the northwest, which is from the middle of the image going up. And that these 3 lines of mountains create a well-contained regional climate system where all of the moisture has to enter from the south of the mountains that are on our west. And it creates a circulation within this triangle of mountains. And there's a unique ecosystem in this place. And the entire landscape is on a scale of about 500,000 hectares, or about 1 million acres. And I wanted you to see that to begin, so that you can see that we start to define the activities of our projects within larger scale structures that are the shape of the land itself, and the way that that changes the kind of weather and the kind of ecology that exists. Come on, why are you not zooming? Please zoom. There we go. And then now what I want to show you is how different projects are embedded within the landscape and how they relate to each other by looking from the land itself. The first is Parque Moncora, which is a community reforestation project right on the edge of the town of Barichara. And this is a place where a lot of high schoolers come and volunteer. People from universities come to learn about the reforestation of the native forest. We have a project to create syntropic agroforestry and food forests in this place. And it's right at the top of the town. So this is like an anchor, highly visible public project. But then next to it and below the cliff is a piece of land that we crowdfunded money to buy this land, where we're going to place our own bioregional learning center, the HR Ecoversity. This is 10 hectares of land that is connected to neighboring projects that you can see on the map. And so while the focus of this land is to demonstrate how to connect the territory through landscape restoration, and also how to connect the territory through regenerative education, that it's also physically situated next to other projects in the territory. For example, right here we have a project called Guaymaru, which is owned by a Dutch couple. This is private land. It's about 8.5 hectares of land, or about 17 acres of land, that they have been reforesting for almost 10 years. And they demonstrate bioconstruction and gray water and black water filtration. They have a glamping campsite where woofers and overlanders, meaning volunteers from all over the world, come and learn from them on their land. And they are right up the hill from where the Ecoversity is located. And then right next to them is a piece of land called Totumo, which is another 9.5 hectares of land, or 18 acres, or 19 acres of land, which is connected. You can start to see these 3 projects organize themselves into a drainage basin of a dead stream. a small river that used to run until the mid-1970s and that died, and that we're now working to restore by collaborating across our projects. But you can also see there's this area in blue below all of these other pieces of land, which is an aquifer system, a subterranean water flow that is a feature of the landscape next to these projects. Up here at the top of the ridgeline where that aquifer system is a very degraded piece of land. This is the first land that we crowdfunded to raise money for, and we bought this to create a community project. It's called Oregan de Laguna Nature Reserve. And the reason it's called Oregan de Lagua, which is Spanish for origin of water, is because it's at the top of an aquifer system for groundwater supply. And it's also, as you can see with this blue line going down the image, it's also the top of one of the tributaries that fills water into the Barichara River. So it's part of the Barichara River watershed, as well as being connected to an aquifer system. And we understand the purpose and the name of this land because of the way that it relates to water flowing across the landscape. But then we have projects like Fodacion Monte Chico, which is here right next to the Bioparque. And this is a piece of land where they have created a food forest and are doing demonstration work in syntropic agroforestry. But their main focus is the preservation of cultural knowledge about natural textiles. So they do a lot of work with middle school and high school kids, teaching them how to use native plants to make natural fibers, clothing, and clothing dyes. And they work with the Ministry of Culture of Colombia to bring these resources and to bring teachers from across Colombia to teach the children these native practices. So here's a project that is connected to the territory through the native plants and the use of native plants with cultural knowledge. Connected to this, but in another piece of the territory, is a project called Ojo de Agua, which is Spanish for the eye of water, and Guaane colibri. Guaane is the word in Spanish for the kind of barn that doesn't have walls on it, that's used for drying tobacco. Colibri is Spanish for hummingbird. The Guaane colibri is a community theater, and Ojo de Agua is a project where children are taught how to create documentaries, where they reconstruct the cultural history of violence and peace, environmental destruction, and environmental restoration. And the children are leading the work of recovering and integrating this historical knowledge through documentaries and community theater, which is connected to watershed restoration and the history of violence and the construction of peace, which are vital elements for how this landscape was destroyed in the first place. And then there's another project called Aguasanta, or Holy Water, which is a 14-hectare regenerative farm demonstrating regenerative agroforestry and watershed restoration. And it's also a place that works with a network of 13 other farms that are all in the same area, teaching them composting, soil building, how to create what's called terra preta, which is an indigenous practice of soil production, which makes the best soils on earth. It's an indigenous technique from the Amazon. And they also built a collaboration between 14 farms to create a coffee brand and a social enterprise that's structured as a benefit corporation. And so they actually created a social business and a network of collaboration between 14 farms that are anchored to the work at Aguasanta. But Aguasanta also functions as a learning center to teach campesino youth, meaning the kids from these farms, how to engage in these regenerative practices. But then there's also the Huerta Kubernetary, which translates into English as the community garden or the community orchard. This is a project that during the pandemic, when COVID started in 2020, all of the tourism industry collapsed because they shut down the movement of people. And during that time, local people really struggled to feed themselves because they didn't have enough money to buy food. So someone donated this area of private land for 16 families to come together and start growing food and create food security. But it built with it such a strong tapestry of human relationships that all of the families continued coming to the land and working after the pandemic ended, or rather after tourism opened up again. And they offer workshops and knowledge sharing. And later, when we brought syntropic agroforestry to the region, we set up a demonstration site in how to build a food forest with continuous food production. And this is a major hub for about 30 neighbors, 30 local families to come together and learn food resilience with each other. And this is near the village of Guaane. Guaane is the name of the indigenous people of this territory, who were officially wiped out in a successful cultural genocide about 200 years ago. The final remnants of the Guaane culture are tattered and frayed and fragmented, and the last remaining blood relatives of the Guaane people live in this village. And so this is a cultural heritage site and an anchor of the ancestral territory of the indigenous people. And they also have their own community aqueduct, so they manage their own water as a village, and they're connected to the local tourism industry. But then you look over here back in Barichara, and you see this project called Casa Común, the common house, which is a place where a web of solidarity exchanges has been established to create a community-owned marketplace of local products and goods and services, where local people bring their waste fruit that they grow on their farm that they can't sell. They process it in ways that make it high-value products, such as a type of granola that's created with pineapple that would have been thrown away. And now Casa Común is a community center for solidarity economic exchanges and ways of building alternative economic models, and also a place for neighbors to buy and sell goods and services from each other through a community marketplace. Then over here in this part of the territory is Korosoma. This is a group of women who are therapists who have a diversity of approaches, but all of them work on collective trauma healing. And a lot of the work they do is creating women's circles and helping bring people together in the territory to build peace and to heal their traumas. But also they share a lot of knowledge about local plants, recipes, ways of processing textiles and other things. So they create these sharing exchanges of knowledge while working on trauma healing through a therapeutic lens that is connected to a variety of other projects in the territory. Then over here, this is a place called Salto de Miko, which translates into English as the jump of the monkey. This is a 400-foot tall waterfall of a dead river. Right now, even though the drainage into this basin for the waterfall is about 30,000 hectares, there's no water that goes over the waterfall. The only water that does go over is a pipe that dumps all of the toilet water, all of the poop and pee of the town of Barichara, completely unprocessed and fully contaminated, causing a cancer epidemic with the children in the countryside below. And this is a place that is of profound cultural significance to the indigenous people. And it's an emblem of corruption of the local mafia that calls itself the mayor's office, that keeps pocketing all the money to create a water treatment facility while dumping all the poop and pee over the river, over the waterfall. And it's a place where there's a mythic narrative that when the Guaane people were being wiped out by the conquistadors, they refused to be conquered, and the last of their warriors jumped to their death, which is why they call this Salto de Miko, the jumping off point, where they are now an unconquered and unceded land because of this symbolic act. And this is a place where some of our community groups have brought children to recultivate consciousness about how we treat our water and how we treat our territory, which is catalyzing a really diverse and powerful web of learning explorations for how to restore the watershed of the Barichara River that should someday go over this waterfall again. And then if you zoom out, you can see all of these projects are embedded within a deforested plateau. In the last 80 years, we have the people living in this area cut down and destroyed about 95% of their native forests, and the whole area is in the process of becoming a desert. And what you can see is all of the projects are connected to each other through this desertification process. And all of our restoration efforts need to scale back up to the size of that regional climate system. And then here we have this hidden serpent, which is the underground water supply of the aquifer system that for 300 years brought water security to the people of Barichara until the 1990s, when the corrupt mafia-based mayor's office decided to privatize the water supply and sell everyone in the town water that's pumped from the Barichara River, which is also when they killed the Barichara River. And the Barichara River no longer runs over the waterfall of Salto de Miko because of the reservoirs they put in place, killing the river, to be able to force the people of Barichara to buy water from the local mafia instead of getting water from wells that were in their courtyards, like they had been doing for the last 300 years. And I wanted you to see this so that you could start to get a feel for how we look at all of these projects through a landscape lens. And that when we look at these different projects as relating to each other within the landscape, it changes how we understand the story and the relationship of each project to all the others. And so I hope that just flying through this example of, these are not all of the projects in Barichara, there are many more, but this already should give you a sense that looking through the lens of the land itself really changes how we understand the way that these projects might relate to each other and might collaborate with each other. So Marissa, I'm happy to talk about North America and the continental scale, if that's helpful too. Just let me know.
Yeah, like 5 minutes?
Yeah, I can do it faster than that.
5 minute perspective on the continental scale. Okay,
well,
great.
I can do it faster than that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen again. And what I want to show you all is if we look here in Google Earth, where I can zoom in and out, and we go back up here to North America, we're here somewhere in the middle of the Rockies in this area. And the Colorado River, if you followed my cursor, is spreading across this whole area of the desert Southwest. And by working in the area of Carbondale and the area of Paonia, we are beginning to touch the source waters of the Colorado River, which means we can begin to collaborate up and down the different basins of this large watershed. But also, because we are down here in Barichara doing work, and we're collaborating with people on the Osa Peninsula in Costa Rica, and we have relationships with people in other parts of Central America, we can start to ask ourselves, how do we work at a continental scale? And so by having a cluster of projects in the Central Rockies, we can begin to see that we can organize up and down the Colorado River, or maybe with the Arkansas River, start to move across the Great Plains into the Midwest. But we're actually doing a project up here in Toronto, in this part of the Great Lakes. And what's really interesting about this area, for those of you who have never been there, is just as we zoom in, you'll start to see there are lots of lakes. There are actually more lakes than you can count. Start looking around, there's just thousands and thousands of lakes throughout this whole region. And that is because, if I zoom back out, the world's largest forest is the boreal forest that spreads across northern Canada and actually wraps around the earth. If I was to move to the other side, it's also over here in northern Russia and Siberia. That the world's largest forest is around the Arctic Circle, and it's the boreal forest. But when we come back to North America, look at all of those lakes in the boreal forest. There are thousands and thousands of lakes. And as they drain southward, they actually fill the Great Lakes. So when we start, we're going to be going to Toronto in January to start activating a bioregional dialogue there with some collaborators we have in the Toronto area. We also have some other friends in Cowichan Valley over here on Vancouver Island that are going to be inviting us to, I think they sent us an email this morning, officially inviting us to come and help them activate a bioregional process there. And all of you are here at the headwaters of the Colorado River. And we can start to see a continental scale process. We can start to see that protecting the boreal forests and the drainage into the Great Lakes, which can begin by anchoring into Toronto, would start to give us a continental scale process of planetary significance because this whole area of the boreal forest to the Great Lakes is the largest collection of fresh water on Earth. About 40% of all fresh water on Earth is in the boreal forest together with the Great Lakes. And then over here where you are, we have one of the most important and one of the most contentious river systems, the Colorado River. And then up here on Vancouver Island, we have the Salish Sea and a network of islands and a giant weather system that produces monsoon-like behaviors for both Arizona, down in the desert Southwest, and the rains of the Pacific Northwest. And simply by going back and forth in scales, by looking out to this continental scale, and then zooming back into our bioregional projects, we can begin to see how these bioregional exchanges are about something much more than just Paonia collaborating with Carbondale. It's, yes, you guys can go back and forth across McClure Pass and help each other in a mutually beneficial way. But then you might ask, how would you collaborate with the people of Toronto? How would you collaborate with the people of the Salish Sea? How would we start to create exchanges for healing and protecting the boreal forest, which is at severe risk of destruction because of climate change? Because the global warming effects are about 5 times more intense in the Arctic Circle than they are at the equator. So if we have an average warming of the whole planet of 2 degrees Celsius, then it might be 10 degrees Celsius warmer in the Arctic Circle. And it averages to 2 degrees Celsius for the planet. So the boreal forest and that freshwater supply is related to you in some way. And later, if we start to talk about the Mississippi River, which is 40% of the continental United States, you know, the Mississippi River drains 40% of the lower 48 states. So you can start to imagine bioregional projects putting themselves into subbasins, into river watersheds of the Mississippi River that they can organize to the continental scale, just like how where you are, you could move your way up and down the Colorado River. And the people of Toronto can move themselves up and down the Great Lakes area and into the boreal forest. It's this way of thinking that I wanted to share with you, to just see that there's a much bigger play. And that by getting really good at doing work in your own bioregion and getting really good at collaborating with other bioregions is how we can move up to the continental scale a little bit further down the road. So that's it, Marissa. Hope that was good.
Great. Yeah, you're getting some applause over here. Thank you. See if I can print this so you can. Yeah, folks want to say goodbye to Joe. They're going to head back to the Front Range and take care of themselves.
Bye, everybody.
You got a care package waiting for you outside the library.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right, we'll all be in touch. We'll see you guys soon.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.
And Carbondale folks, you're welcome to